When you stand here on the ice in the silence of the Arctic, you feel like you're on this stable platform of ice. But it's not, it's a living, breathing entity. And if you look carefully, you can see it's the ocean breathing up and down. Here, all life follows the rhythm of the sea ice. It's a hunting ground, a haven, and a nursery. It shelters a marine life of incredible richness. In the Arctic, life and death depend on the ice.
I've been coming to the Arctic since the early 1990s. This is my 39th trip. The Arctic is really tattooed on my heart. I love this place. It's pure nature here. It's extremely important to document what is going on here on this ice floe. We're the witnesses, the eyes of the people who are not able to see this extraordinary sight.
I feel a strong imperative to tell this story for everyone around the world and show them what it's like above the ice, but also underneath the ice. The far north of our planet is covered with millions of square kilometers of ice, the continental ice on land and the sea ice on the ocean. In Nunavut, Canada, the Inuit village of Ikpiarchuk, also known as Arctic Bay, is a gateway to this mysterious world of sea ice. We are 700 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle in the land of the midnight sun. It's the beginning of June, and there is 24 hours of daylight.
We're here to experience the unique world of an Arctic floe edge. It's where the winter sea ice meets the ocean. In the spring, it's a magnet for wildlife. To get there, we have to travel on the sea ice to Lancaster Sound by snowmobiles and sleds called comatics.
I'm on this expedition with underwater cameraman Mario Cyr. He's a living legend in the world of extreme diving. For 30 years, he's captured spectacular Arctic wildlife footage. His many dives under the ice have earned him the title of Iceman. He was one of the first to swim with a polar bear and to film walruses underwater.
What's extraordinary is that I get to dive with Jill on this mission. I've been hearing about her for at least 10 years, and it might sound strange, but I was convinced that one day we would work together. Jill Heinerth is one of the top extreme divers in the world. She made history filming the most remote underwater caves and icebergs in Antarctica, places where no one has been before. More people have walked on the moon than seen some of the places she explored.
I'm really excited to be working with Mario Cyr. He's had so many years of experience here in the region, and I know he has so much wisdom to share with me and stories about what it was like before.
I came here for the first time in 1991. It's hard to believe how much has changed, especially the ice. It's really drastic. Just look at the bay right here. Last year, the ice was gone by the 5th of July, and that was an all-time record year. This year, we're in early June, and if the trend continues, we can expect the ice to be gone even before July 5th.
The Arctic is changing faster than anywhere else on the planet, and they say that what happens in the Arctic, so goes the planet. So this is an incredible place for us to learn and predict what can happen through global climate change.
We're worried about the ice conditions because it's been raining for the past week. It's up to our guide, David Oyokuluk, to decide if we can go.
We're just starting to have water in the bay, and pretty soon it's going to be all around everywhere.
How much longer before the ice moves out for the season?
Within the 2 weeks, the ice past our camp is going away, should be getting away.
Okay. We're going to be at camp for another week, so I hope it's...
Oh, yeah.
No problem?
No problem
for the next week?
No. Right now, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you go.
Yes, sooner than later, I think. We plan to dive at the floe edge in Lancaster Sound, one of the biggest fjords in the world. But we've got 35 kilometers to go on the ice before we get to our camp.
The ice has been melting earlier in recent years. Today, it's 8 degrees Celsius, and it's rained a lot in the past few days. Even our guides are surprised. I've never seen this much water on the ice floe at this time of year. We should have come a couple of weeks earlier.
It was kind of shocking to ride on this much water. It was more like surfing than gliding. The most scary part was when we had to cross more and more of those giant breaks in the ice, the leads. Every time you're reminded that you're riding over 300 meters of freezing water.
Some of the leads are very wide. We need to make long detours to find a safe route. After 4 harrowing hours, we finally reach the base camp, where there's an unpleasant surprise.
This is the new reality of climate change in the north. Rain, flooding, and a fast loss of sea ice.
This is really something new. This camp was only set up a week ago, and now we must move it completely to the other side. There's too much water in the tents.
Okay, 1, 2, 3, go. Okay.
So our cook tent, about the warmest thing in camp, has been slowly sinking until there was about a foot of water in and around the tent. And we had no choice but to move it to a higher area of snow. It'll serve us for a couple of days, but I'm sure we'll have to move it again.
The rain has stopped, but the temperature remains above freezing. It takes us all night to reorganize the camp. Time is running out. We're beginning to wonder if we will reach the floe edge before the ice breaks up. The next day, we can finally leave for the open waters of Lancaster Sound. But we are still 25 kilometers away. Every time I go on an expedition, I worry. Will the animals be there? Will the conditions be good? Because in the Arctic, like all life here, you're at the mercy of nature.
There are a lot of new leads, so it will take us at least 3 hours to get there. We made it. Our guide makes sure the ice is solid enough.
Every time I come here, I'm amazed. It's spectacular. It's extraordinary. It feels like all the creatures of the Arctic have come to greet us.
The Lancaster Sound floe edge is majestic.
Beluga.
Yeah. After all this hard work and all the tough conditions, this is the perfect
day. Yeah.
For me, this is the best place in the world. There is no better place.
Oh, there's the beluga.
Les belugas qui s'en viennent.
Mother and calf.
Yeah. Narwhal. C'est un narwhal. Ouais.
When you stop talking, you hear absolutely nothing, except the beluga blowing or the breathing of the narwhals. From time to time, you can hear a bowhead whale. I've filmed bowhead whales underwater before. It's amazing to find yourself only a few meters away from these giant marine mammals who can weigh up to 100 tons.
In the spring, bowhead whales gather near the floe edge. It's incredible to think that they feed on animals no bigger than a grain of rice. Lucky them, bowheads have a layer of fat that can be 1/3 of a meter thick. It's good protection from the cold. They need it because the water temperature here is between 0 and -1. We have to rely on our dry suits, but our heads and faces will be wet. Mario and I are used to it and can stay in the water for about 90 minutes.
Yes, it's cold, but it's absolutely worth it to get cold.
Our guides keep an eye out for curious polar bears.
Whales are nervous of anything new in their environment, so we'll use our snorkels rather than air tanks.
When I got into the water, I was overwhelmed by the sounds I could hear. It was amazing. It's the marine mammals communicating with each other. I could hear the narwhals clicking, the belugas singing like canaries, and the seals whistling, a trill that runs from high to low. It's like an alien world. I'm so excited to finally be here, diving on the floe edge. The narwhals and the belugas are moving around in family units. They're on the surface just breathing up, and then diving under the floe edge. And it's unbelievable to witness this experience.
I'm as curious about the animals as they are with me. As I was swimming around and snorkeling, they were teasing me. They were swimming behind me, and as soon as I would turn around, they would dive down deep, making it impossible to film them. And they would roll on their backs with their bellies, and they're looking up at me, and it was definitely a two-way experience. I mean, I'm not afraid of them. I'm curious about them, and they're just as curious about me.
In the Arctic, some animals are not really dangerous. The belugas, the narwhals will come near you. They're quite curious. It's so beautiful to watch. Lancaster Sound is a very rich ecosystem. In 2018, it was designated a National Marine Conservation Area. It's the largest one in Canada. The Inuit call it Tallerutup Imanga, which means open ocean area, because large portions of the ocean never freeze here.
Filming the wildlife here is incredibly challenging, but when you do get that sweet moment, that interaction, it's really, really special.
Lancaster Sound is home to 3/4 of the world's narwhals. Still, we're very lucky because they're usually difficult to approach. They can sense us from far away. Narwhals have the best underwater radar in the animal kingdom. They can even sense small fish in total darkness. Male narwhals and a few females have a unique spiraled tusk that can be up to 3 meters long. It's actually a tooth filled with a sensitive network of nerves. Scientists are still trying to figure out what it's used for.
Every year, around 13,000 belugas migrate through here. They come to the floe edge for the same reason as bowhead whales: food. Their sophisticated sonar lets them hunt under the ice in total darkness. As big as they are, narwhals and belugas are no match for a new Arctic predator, the orcas. Until recently, sea ice kept these killer whales away. Unlike the Arctic whales, they can't travel under the ice with their large dorsal fin. But as the sea ice season gets shorter, orcas hunt more and more in the far north.
Most people think about the Arctic and they think that it's lifeless and harsh and cold and scoured by winds, and it is. But when you go beneath the ice, that's where all the life is. It's incredibly alive. The ocean is alive.
Mario was one of the first to dive and film under the sea ice. It needs a different technique than the one we use to swim with the belugas and narwhals.
Diving under the ice can be very dangerous. There is a strong current, so we could be swept away. For our security, we are tethered to our guide, David Olyokuluk. He'll keep an eye out for polar bears and will tug on the cable to let us know if one gets in the water.
It's such a different world here.
The sea ice, it's like the wheat fields of the Arctic. There's all this hanging algae underneath the ice, and zooplankton and phytoplankton. And so it's the base of the food chain, and everything else here relies on the sea ice. And as it breaks apart, it feeds the oceans.
It's a unique habitat. There are more than 1,800 known species of algae living here that we know very little about. We do know that they have a huge impact on the Earth. They draw their energy from the sun and are found throughout the world's oceans. Together, they produce half the oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere and are the source of 1 out of every 2 breaths we take. As the ice melts, sunlight triggers a massive spring bloom of algae. They feed small animals called zooplankton.
The spring bloom creates a chain reaction. Zooplankton is a fat-rich feast for shrimps and small fish. These attract bigger fish, like Arctic cod. The cod are eaten by seals, belugas, and narwhals that are in turn hunted by polar bears, orcas, and Inuits.
But a warming climate is undermining the base of this food web. With sea ice disappearing earlier each spring, the massive spring bloom now happens sooner. It seems incredible that the once predictable world of Arctic sea ice is changing so rapidly that it will affect not only the tiniest, the plankton, but also the largest, the bowhead whales.
Wow, it's already very strong.
Oh, yeah.
Filming animals in their natural habitat is important to me, especially since in 30 or 40 years, this ice may no longer exist. This will greatly affect the animals, but we don't know how. One thing is certain, the stretch of ice that we see here in Lancaster Sound is pretty much the same size as in the 1990s. What has changed is its thickness. The more it thins, the quicker it melts. Eventually, it will melt much faster in the spring, and this will surely affect the animals who live around this ice.
We are worried not only about the future of Arctic wildlife and the Inuit, but also about the effects of changing sea ice on our global climate. As the ice comes and goes each year, it helps to drive the planet's climate. White snow reflects up to 90% of the sun's energy back into space. The sea ice acts like a blanket to keep the ocean cold. Sea ice coverage varies naturally with the seasons. The older the ice, the thicker it is. But in recent decades, the ice has been disappearing at an alarming rate. Since 1980, the Arctic has lost 80% of its summer ice and 42% of its winter ice. Equally catastrophic, the Arctic is losing more and more older ice. In 1985, this ice made up almost half of the ice floe. Today, it counts for only 21%. Millions of square meters of sea ice are lost. Dark seawater absorbs the sun's heat, and as the ocean temperature rises, so does the planet's. The Canadian Arctic is now warming 3 times faster than the rest of the world. As the Arctic ice melts, moisture is released into the atmosphere. Eventually, it falls back to Earth as rain. This causes the ice to melt even faster, something we get to experience firsthand.
We must evacuate, but Jill and I decide to risk one last trip to the floe edge. We're almost there, and we come upon a lead in the ice. It must be 3 or 4 meters wide, and this lead goes a very long way. It's impossible to bypass. We can't get to the floe edge.
Yeah, I don't feel safe around here.
No.
It's too...
It's too large, huh?
Yeah, the crack is too big, and it can break apart anytime as soon as the wind picks up.
So this is moving away?
Yeah, it's starting to moving away. It's not safe.
So this might be the new floe edge tomorrow.
Well, we'll see tomorrow. The ice and the wind will decide.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I appreciate your safety.
Yeah.
Our guide is right. Even if the weather's great, a windstorm could rise at any time and sweep the ice. This is one of the big changes the Inuit worry about. The weather is more and more unpredictable. We should all be worried. A warming Arctic weakens the jet stream and causes extreme weather all over the planet.
The jet stream is a powerful wind that circles high above the northern hemisphere. The cold Arctic temperatures give it strength. But as the Arctic warms up, the jet stream slows, which increases the roller coaster effect. It plunges further south, carrying frigid Arctic air. and then loops back further north, bringing warmer air. These weather systems now tend to stay in place longer, causing severe cold spells in winter and droughts in summer. A weak jet stream might also explain why devastating hurricanes are no longer diverted out to sea. They tend to head straight for the continent and hug the coastlines, producing sheets of rain.
The conditions at camp have deteriorated even further, and they're forecasting more rain. The leads are widening, and the ice could break up at any time. We need to evacuate immediately. Our komatiks are really heavy, so we'll have to make long detours around the widening leads to avoid falling into the giant ponds. Every minute counts.
The return trip was way scarier than when we went out to camp. I still can't believe we made it back with no major incidents and all our gear intact. We must have been the last ones to travel on the ice this year. A few days later, the entire ice floe broke apart.
The ice disappears earlier and earlier each spring and forms later in the fall. If this trend continues, the unthinkable could happen as early as 2040. This means 3 months of summer with no sea ice on the entire Arctic Ocean. That would be unheard of.
I worry about the Arctic, about this incredible natural sanctuary, because as we lose the sea ice, we lose a way of life for the indigenous people of the North. We lose the mammals that require the sea ice in order to birth their babies or hide from their prey. It is so important that we all band together to protect the entire Arctic and do our best in small ways to change the tide in global climate change.
Climate changes do not only affect the sea ice. On land, the continental ice is also rapidly melting. Jill and I now travel to Greenland, the planet's biggest island. A huge ice sheet covers 80% of the land. The ice there could be more than 100,000 years old. At its peak, it is 3 kilometers thick. The ice is so heavy that the pressure makes it move towards the sea and creates gigantic glaciers. Every year, those glaciers send hundreds of billions of tons of icebergs into the sea. Some drift into the fishing port of Ilulissat, known as the world capital of icebergs.
Captain Jonathan Davidson will take us to Disco Bay.
Mario.
Right.
Nice to meet you. This side?
Yeah.
We want to explore the underside of icebergs. Now that the glaciers are melting faster, there are more and more of them. We must move with great caution around these icy giants. They could break up or roll in an instant.
What's impressive is that it's at least 7 to 10 times bigger underwater. It's huge.
Imagine how deep this one goes.
Oh,
yeah. Oh, look at that.
Jill knows icebergs. She's explored their interiors in Antarctica.
So it's always tough to know exactly the right iceberg to go for. I like the smaller ones that don't have anything overhanging that can fall on your head, and something that looks like a stable shape so it doesn't roll.
Never sure it's 100%.
Never sure. It's amazing, the shapes of this one. It's so beautiful, but it's too dangerous. If one of those pieces breaks away and falls in, the whole weight will be destabilized and it can roll. And I don't think there's a helmet in the world that's gonna protect us from that. Just too dangerous. Rolling, rolling. Ah. That's why iceberg diving is dangerous. That's a little one.
This one is very fragile. It's about to break.
Very fragile.
There's a small one over there. It seems fine. It looks stable enough.
But no guarantees.
No, never.
We take every precaution. The slightest mistake could be fatal.
Good.
Things are going well. But a few meters down, the water becomes murky.
As the iceberg melts, it creates this roiling mix of fresh and salt water. But what it does is it fuels this entire food chain.
We see lots of beautiful bioluminescent comb jellies. There must be lots for them to eat, as they are voracious predators.
The icebergs around us creak and rumble, like thunder. We heard noises, deafening noises, strong like dynamite explosions. Sound travels fast underwater, so it was very loud. A few times, we could almost feel the tremor. It's become almost impossible to film.
It's dirty.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
I can't focus. It's impossible.
We head further offshore. Captain Davidson thinks the water might be clearer.
I think this looks like a good size and shape. It seems like it probably rolled this morning, so hopefully it's safe.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yeah, I think this looks a lot better visibility now that we're at the edge of the ice fields. We're away from some of that algae. I think this is as safe as we're gonna get. We should definitely dive here.
Yeah.
When an iceberg shrinks underwater, it becomes top-heavy, it rolls, and it sparkles like mineral water.
We jumped in the water around this beautiful blue berg that had just recently rolled. And as it was melting, we were watching this effervescence, these bubbles shooting up from the ledges up towards the surface, just creating this stream, a curtain almost of bubbles. Is air that's being released from the packed snow and ice of that iceberg. It could be tens of thousands of years old, finally being released back into the atmosphere.
I saw something I'd never seen before, the release of all that fresh water going up. We could see masses of oxygen bubbles, which attracted a lot of fauna. It was amazing. As the iceberg melts, it mixes in with the salt water, carrying with it nutrients that feed from the bottom up of the food chain. So we see phytoplankton, zooplankton, and then shrimp, krill, and small fish, and then everything else comes to feed on all of that. Icebergs are like the engine for the food chain here.
go.
When you stayed down there for the last 5 minutes, I thought, is he seeing something I'm not seeing?
There were lots of jellyfish, cleones, we call sea angels. I'm pretty sure I saw some mating. Several times I saw two together swimming through the water. What's really strange, at about 10 meters from the iceberg, there's no longer any marine life. All life is really stuck on the ice. It's incredible.
Yeah.
C'est bon.
All right.
Good. Bon, on va lever ça. C'est très important.
Like sea ice, these icebergs have an important effect on plankton growth. In fact, the spring plankton bloom around Greenland is so huge that it can be seen from space. The patches of green are chlorophyll. As the fresh meltwater moves up along the sides of the iceberg, it carries nutrients up from the bottom. No wonder Disco Bay has such a rich marine ecosystem.
"90% of what Greenland exports comes from the sea. Now, that used to be mostly halibut and shrimp, but things seem to be changing these days. Now we're seeing mackerel on the east coast, we're seeing cod on the west coast. In fact, the Atlantic cod are moving into the territory of the Arctic cod.
With climate change, fish migrate to new habitats, where the water is cooler or where the food is more plentiful. From the smallest algae to huge whales, life is on the move. But this could threaten the balance between species.
We came to this part of Disco Bay because of a very unique phenomenon that's new. It seems that bowhead whales and humpback whales are now here at the same time, and that's never happened before.
Will the right food be available at the right time? Timing is everything, and it isn't just about food. Could it get confusing for these great communicators if their songs start to overlap? The impacts are hard to predict.
Like sea ice, icebergs are at risk because of climate change. As glaciers melt, they retreat inland. Will they eventually stop sending icebergs into the sea? There are thousands of icebergs in Disco Bay. They all come from the Ilulissat Glacier. This monster generates 10% of all icebergs in Greenland. This is where one of the most spectacular calving events ever filmed occurred. In just a few days in August 2015, 15 billion tons of icebergs spilled into Disco Bay. It took 100 years for the glacier to retreat 15 kilometers. Incredibly, it has moved even more in the last 20 years. Every time an iceberg collapses into the bay, sea levels rise. If all of the Greenland ice sheet melted, the global sea level would rise and flood the coastal areas where hundreds of millions of people live.
The meltwater pouring out of Greenland and the Arctic Ocean also influences our climate. These waters flow naturally into the North Atlantic Ocean. But too much meltwater can disturb one of our great ocean currents, the Gulf Stream. Like a gigantic underwater pipeline, it carries a huge flow of warm water. This keeps the weather milder in some parts of Europe and the eastern United States. These waters contain more salt than the northern seas, so when they get cooler, they become denser and heavier. Similar to an enormous undersea waterfall, these waters sink deep into the ocean and then move back south. This is what keeps the Gulf Stream going. But as more Arctic ice melts, there's more fresh water on top of the ocean, which dilutes the salty water and slows the flow of the Gulf Stream. It's now at its slowest speed in 1,600 years. A severe slowdown could cause more extreme weather in Europe and the eastern United States, like droughts in summer and severe cold spells in winter. After chasing icebergs in Greenland, we've come back to Canada, to the region of Nunavut, sitting directly on the polar circle. We are looking for walruses and polar bears, now that there's almost no ice.
Very fast.
Here there are huge tides. The sea swells very, very fast. You can actually see it rising.
Very heavy.
Our guide, Solomon Maliki, knows the region's wildlife well. Mario has been working with him for years.
I think we're done here, right?
Yeah.
Ça. Je pense que c'est la 6e ou 7e.
I think it's my 6th or 7th time here. And this is the first time there's been no ice in the bay at this time of year. 2 years ago, on the same day, July 21st, we could not go out because there was too much ice. This year, it's completely different from all the other years. We're heading to the wild island of Kiguktaluk, home to many polar bears and walruses. First, we have to travel 80 kilometers across the huge bay of Nunavut. Three hours later, we finally see the island. And the supreme predator of the region. Our guides are setting up camp around a small wooden shelter used by Inuit hunters. It's almost midnight. Waves of mosquitoes invade the campsite.
We've been here about 2 hours now, and our guides have been setting up our camp. But right now, we're also fishing for char. We've got one being cleaned, and hopefully we'll have a couple more for dinner shortly. And behind me, they're getting ready a bear perimeter, an electric fence that will keep away the polar bears, which are quite plentiful around here.
Coming here, we saw 2 bears, less than 1 kilometer away. For sure, when they smell our supper, they may come closer. In the past, a guide would stand guard outside, sitting on a chair with a rifle. And 2 things would happen. First, there's a lot of mosquitoes and it's very unpleasant. And second, when I would go out to the loo or to check, I'd often find my guide asleep on the chair. So an electric fence is really the best thing.
We're looking for a large walrus colony, which usually stays on the shores of Qikiqtaaluk Island. We're worried because over the past 50 years, the ice cover here in mid-July has decreased by 60%.
Normally, a walrus would use the ice for breeding, for birthing the young. A mother walrus spends her time on the ice and then forages nearby so that she can feed herself and come back to nurse her young. But as the ice moves around, it might take that walrus farther and farther from traditional foraging grounds.
Because that's how nature works. For millions of years, animals have adapted by moving close to their food, so they don't waste energy looking for it. That will happen more and more because there is less and less ice.
Okay, have it.
We search the shallow shoreline water. It's what the walrus prefer. We only find a few beluga whales. The females and their calves often swim in the warmer water near the shore.
It's pretty shallow.
Yeah, it is.
Whoa.
We finally spot our first walruses, females with a young one only a few months old.
Go on the water?
You think we'll be able to get them to stay still?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Try.
Would make me happy.
I'm sure she's the first woman to dive with walruses, and it's an honor for me to take her with me. At the same time, I'm trying not to scare her, but she has to be aware that it's extremely dangerous.
So any advice for me while I get dressed here?
Yes, stay at about 45 degrees, half a meter behind me. If it attacks, I would rather it attacks me. If it attacks, it may attack with its tusks, but normally it attacks with the top of its head. If it ever comes towards you, move the camera so that's what it hits. A walrus is like a torpedo. It hits very hard.
Frankly, it's a little scary. I mean, the first thing he said to me was, "It is very, very dangerous." I thought, okay, well, tell me, what do I need to be worried about? And he said, whatever you do, don't let the walrus corner you, like with ice or in a bay or against a rocky shore. And I said, well, what will happen? He said, oh, it'll kill you.
Mario knows what he's talking about. In 1991, he was the first diver to swim with walruses.
The first time I dove with walruses, the Inuit guide said it was suicide. They have all these myths about walruses grabbing hunters and dragging them under the water. So it's like throwing yourself into a lion's den. But even after maybe 100 dives with walruses, they're still the animal I fear the most. Much more than polar bears or white sharks.
Do it.
We head for the shallow water near the shore, where the walruses are swimming.
There was not much water. We had to lay flat on the bottom because it's dangerous to be in the water column when they arrive. you could get hit. I heard them 2 or 3 times. But we could barely see more than 5 meters around us.
After 45 minutes in the freezing water, we have to come back to the surface. We're beginning to wonder if we'll ever find the main colony of walruses.
You okay? Yeah. Good. You ready, Solomon?
Yeah.
Walruses!
There are no walruses in sight. This is unexpected. Even Solomon is surprised.
In the early 1990s, we knew where the animals would be on a specific date. From 1991 to 2000, I would come here and it would be really easy to find walruses. Today, nothing holds anymore. It seems animal migration patterns are changing. It's become more difficult to find them. They come early, they come late, or they don't come at all.
We spend the next few days navigating along the coasts. In the past, Solomon and Mario have seen large groups of walruses around here.
Normally, walruses go on cliffs that are really flat and easy to access. Or they go on beaches.
What's the biggest group of walrus you've ever seen? How many?
At least 500.
500!
Ah.
All on the shore.
Swimming on the shore and on some of the ice.
Can we go there?
Well, around the area.
Yeah. Wow, 500, that's amazing.
This is where the big colony of walruses used to gather every summer, but not this year. We've looked everywhere. Almost no ice and no walruses. Solomon suggests going to another island where there's still some sea ice left. We see a lot of polar bears. They often swim from one island to the next. Could they be scaring off the walruses? Solomon's intuition is correct. The walruses are here.
Good.
What?
Okay, good.
We found them in the north of Hudson Bay on the last remaining blocks of ice. There was a group of 25 to 30, and again, females and babies were on the side on smaller blocks of ice.
It looks like we'll have another chance to dive with the walruses.
That just went with the baby.
Yeah. Let's check the other group.
Jill?
Yeah.
Not coming at no visibility.
Do this? Okay.
It was difficult to film underwater because there was barely 2 meters of visibility down there. When you're underwater with these giants and you can't see them until the last second, that's too dangerous. You have to see them coming from far away. That's why you need visibility, which we didn't have. We had to use poles and smaller cameras to get some underwater images.
So we're approaching a group of about 40 walrus right now, and we're gonna try using a pole cam instead of getting in the water. We might have a better chance just sort of dropping this in the water and getting close. That's good. At least we know where they've been hiding all this time.
The mothers and the young ones stayed just off to the side of the main group. It can be very dangerous for the calves when the whole group decides to dive into the water at the same time. The little ones can be easily crushed among the big males diving off the ice.
This is a really big group here. And the alarm has been sounded.
Mario grabs a chance to film the walruses from a different angle.
It is so difficult to film wildlife anywhere, but especially in the north. I mean, first we have to find the animals that we want to film. And then when we find them, they may or may not be willing participants in the film.
Finding walruses was quite a challenge, but polar bears bring a different level of danger.
Some of our guides have told us that it's easy for us to observe the polar bear in the summertime. Well, it seems to me that the polar bear are also observing us because they've been right in our camp. So it was magical, but also a little scary when the polar bears were coming in at night. Not just one, but several different ones coming closer and closer to camp. You know, are they looking at us as a meal? Of course. So they're very patiently kind of working their way around the edges and then coming in closer. And our guides were up all night trying to scare them away and move them off. I mean, nobody wants to shoot a polar bear. The technique is just to make noise, sometimes using a gun and shooting nearby to scare the animal off. But still, they're very persistent, and what an incredible thing that was to see. It's a remarkable feeling to be predated on, and that's kind of a humbling experience.
It's really the best place for polar bears. We're on one of their major migration routes, although some are permanent residents. They stay here all year long because there are plenty of islands. In winter, when there is sea ice, they can walk from island to island. When the ice is gone in summer, they swim. Polar bears are very good swimmers, and it's easy for them to swim from one island to another. This is where we film polar bears for the first time, because they are often found here in the summer. Lots of them swimming around. So this place is very important to us. As a diver, that's where you want to see them, in the water. And north of Hudson Bay is the place to find them.
Mario was one of the first divers in the world to swim with a polar bear. And this time he's taking me with him. But we have to find the right bear.
The polar bears here are still healthy, and they are the biggest in the world. Many are what we call grandfathers. They are huge. They can easily weigh 700 kilos and be 3 meters tall.
This is one of those grandfathers. It would be suicidal to dive with him. He must be hungry. He's on the hunt for seabirds.
It's incredible. An 800 or 1,000-pound bear, you would never imagine that. Like, I wouldn't want to climb that sheer vertical cliff, but he just nimbly shoots right up there and has no problem getting away.
We see more and more polar bears in bird colonies. There are less seals for them to hunt, so they eat eggs and small birds. It creates a major imbalance in bird colonies. The Inuit tell us they've always seen that, but now they see it more often. It's more common for bears to go after bird colonies.
Starving bears have destroyed 80% of certain bird colonies. But birds are not as nutritious as a fat seal. We soon spot our ideal bear, a young female. It looks like it's going to happen.
A polar bear can swim for days and days at a time without stopping, without eating, without sleeping. They are very strong swimmers. We know they're descendants of grizzlies, but their bodies have adapted. Their front legs have doubled in size, and their front paws have become semi-webbed. Skin has grown between their toes so they can use their front paws to swim better.
Pour pouvoir mieux nager. Coming on the water?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good.
We can't be too careful. Mario has had a close encounter underwater with a bear in the past.
How many pounds more? 6? 5, 6?
Oh, yeah. I've got more than 40 pounds here.
Yeah, good. Quand on plonge avec des ours polaires,
When I dive with polar bears, I put on 2 lead belts. I use a lot of lead because polar bears can go down very quickly.
Ceux qui descendent, ceux qui plongent, descendent non, vraiment très,
They don't
très
go very
rapidement.
deep, barely 4 or 5 meters, because they have the same risk of barotrauma in their ears as we
Au
do.
niveau des oreilles, mais ils descendent
But they
vraiment
swim down
très, très
very
vite.
fast.
Et c'est pour ça, comme
So,
les
with
températures
more lead,
descendent comme ça,
I go down
ils descendent
faster.
à toute vitesse.
Okay. 'Cause I'm a little bit scared.
I don't blame you.
It's the first time.
You're the first woman in the water with the bear.
Really?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can't.
Let's hope it's a man-eater.
Yeah.
Bear's coming. You see? Polar bear.
We position ourselves so that we will cross paths with the polar bear and hope she will not head in the other direction. Visibility isn't great. It seems to be working. She's swimming toward our bubbles. was enchanting and scary to get that close to the Arctic's top predator.
Everything okay?
That's a lot harder than it looks.
It's easy to see why these magnificent animals are the symbol of the Arctic. But now they are also the poster child for climate change here. That's because some polar bears now spend 7 weeks more on land than they did in the 1980s.
Polar bears' capacity to adapt has been extraordinary. They've learned to catch their food, mainly ring seal, on ice floes. The problem right now is that the sea ice decreases every year. Not just in size, but in thickness too. So, polar bears have a harder time finding their main food source. They're desperately looking for ways to feed themselves. We don't know yet if they'll have enough time to adapt. Because everything is happening very quickly. In the past, animals have adapted over thousands of years. But now, they have only decades. That's the big difference today. It's sad to think that this animal may disappear someday. Some scientists say that the path polar bears might take to survive is to mate with grizzlies. And we are starting to see these animals called pizzlies. But for us, as human beings, to see polar bears disappear would be very sad.
The bear population south of Hudson Bay is the most endangered. It has decreased a lot in the past 5 years. What's even more disturbing is the number of bear cubs is only half what it used to be. Is this the sad fate of all polar bears in the Arctic?
In the far north, I saw wonders. I also lived through unique and intense moments. But the Canadian Arctic is warming 3 times as fast as the rest of the planet. And it will be much harder to protect all these wonders.
You can feel it here more than anywhere else on the planet. That the air, the sea, the ice, and the land, and the people are all integrated into this unified ecosystem. Now, we see today that we've lost the ice cover since about 1980, and that's an enormous change. Nobody knows for sure when we'll lose all of the sea ice, but we do know that it's going to make a catastrophic change to the way of life here in the north.
The Arctic from 20 years ago does not exist anymore. And the Arctic of today will probably not exist in 20 years. This ice may be gone. Will my granddaughter or her children live in a world where sea ice and all life that depends on it has disappeared?
Diving with polar bears and walruses it seems crazy. It's scary for me. But for me, having that opportunity has been both a privilege, but also a chance to step a little closer to something that scares me. You know? This wild place scares me. Climate change scares me. But if we all step a little bit closer to these things and learn and experience and
get to know the wonders of our planet, and I think we have a chance of protecting it.
When diving under ice, you need to be tethered to another human being. If anything goes wrong, you tug on the rope and they get you out. But if climate change goes crazy, nobody can pull on the cable to save humanity. So imagine that we are all on a piece of ice and we must absolutely maintain it. Because if it melts, our chance to stabilize the climate will also be melting away.